Hey, this is journal page 28, section 2.1, and here we go. So write the rational number as a decimal. Number one, we rate as negative 9/10, and we would write that as negative 0.9 because we call that 9/10. Okay, same name. We could divide the top by the bottom or the numerator by the denominator, which would be 9 divided by 10 to get 0.9. On that one, we don't have to because of the name, but let's look at number 2. Negative 4 2/3. Well, the negative 4, if these are going to be equivalent decimals, has to have the same whole number part. Well, integer part. Negative 4 is going to be negative 4, but this 2/3 is what we have to figure out. We'll do that off to the side over here. Numerator divided by denominator, 2 divided by 3. So we'll put a decimal, we'll annex a few zeros. 3 goes into 2, no. 3 goes into 20. 6 times, which is 18, subtract 2, 0. 3 goes into 20, 6 times, wait a minute, I just did that. This is just going to keep repeating. Oops, 18. So the 0.6 keeps repeating. I put it on the end over here, 0.6, it keeps repeating. I make a quick double check. It was a negative rational number here, a negative decimal here. Number 3. Again, the integer part stays the integer part. So 1 point something, and I have 7/16. Numerator divided by denominator, so 7 divided by 16. Annex a few zeros here. And 16 goes into 74 times. 64. Subtract. Bring down. 16 goes into 60 3 times. 48, so 12. Bring down. 16 goes into 127 times. 42, 7, 4 is 11, 8, bring down. 16 goes in 85 times, which is 80. So I'm done. 0.4375 goes back here, 0.4375. And we already have the decimal point. We don't put 2 decimal points because I just said the point here. Okay, so don't do that, obviously. Not that you would ever do such a thing. Number 4, write the decimal as a fraction or mixed number in simplest form. Well, we say this number correctly in class now, which makes these easy to do because this is negative 84 hundredths, which would be negative 84 hundredths. Well, that's easy. It does have to be simplified. Here I could divide top and bottom both by 4, which will equal negative 21 over 25. If I didn't see I could divide by 4 right away, I could have divided top and bottom by 2, and then divide top and bottom by 2 again. Either way. Number 5. 5 22 hundredths is 5 22 hundredths. When we simplify this fraction part, we do not simplify the whole number part, so the 5 stays 5. 22 and 100, I can divide top and bottom here by 2 to get 11 over 50. So 5 and 11 over 50. Number 6, negative 1 and 716 thousandths. Negative 1 and 716 thousandths. Well, the negative 1 stays the same, but the top and bottom here are both even. So I would chop them both in half and get 500 on the bottom and 350 and 8, 358 on the top. Well, they're still both even, so I could do that again. Negative 1 and 250 on the bottom this time. 378 divided by 2 would be 179. So negative 1 and 179 250ths. Number 7. Order the numbers from least to greatest. Well, these are very difficult to order how they are right now. It's easier to order these if we put them all in a common form. Decimal being the easiest to order because I don't have to find common denominators. So I'm going to rewrite these right here. 1/5, 0.1, negative 1/2, negative 0.25, and 0.3. And I want them all as decimals. Well, 3 of them are decimals already. Negative 1/2 is negative 0.5, and 1/5 is 0.2. So now I can put these in order, but when I put them in order, I'll be thinking of these values, but I put the numbers they gave me, the rational numbers up here, the fractions, in the order. So least to greatest, so my coldest temperature would be this negative 0 and 5/10 is actually colder than this. So negative 1/2 is colder than negative 1/4 because it's further along the negatives. So I don't write negative 0.5, I write the negative 1/2. So negative 1/2 is the first one. The next one would be the only other negative here, so my negative 0.25. Then I've got 0.1, or 1/10, 0.1. My 0.2, or 2/10 would come next, but I have to write my 1/5 is what they gave me. And finish it up with 0.3. Okay? This is in order from least to greatest. Number 8, same kind of problem, so we'll do it the same way. Negative 1 and 6/10, 5/2, negative 7/8, 0 and 9/10, negative 6/5. Turn them all into decimals. This is already a decimal. 5/2 would be 2.5. Negative 7/8. I could do the division, although I know 7/8 is 0.675. So this would be negative 0.675. 0.9 is already a decimal. And this would be 1 and 1/5, or negative 1.2. Okay? Now I'm going to put those in order from least to greatest. The furthest along the negatives going coldest would be this one right here. So I do it down here, negative 1.6. That was my coldest. The next one would be this negative 1 and 2/10, but I'm going to put what they gave me, negative 6/5. That took care of those. I only have one more negative, so it must be that. I don't write this. I do write that. Negative 7/8. Finally, I have these two, 0 and 9/10, and then finally, this improper fraction, 5/2. Okay? I have just enough room to probably do the next problem, but I'm just going to do it on another piece of paper. Oh, what the heck. I might try it down here. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to do that one. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to do this. It'd be too cramped. I can't do it. Number 9. I'll rewrite what they have. Negative 2/3, 5/9, 0.5, negative 1 and 3/10, negative 10/3. And turning all those into decimals. 2/3 is 0.6 repeating, so this would be negative 0.6 repeating. 5/9. Anything over 9 is just the 5 repeating, so this would be 0.5 repeating. I could, if I didn't know that, top divided by bottom, I'll do it over here. 5 divided by 9. 9 goes into 50 5 times, which is 45. 9 goes into 50 5 times, which is 45. That's going to repeat, so it's just the 0.5 repeating. Here we have 0.5 or 5/10. Here we have negative 1 and 3/10. And here we have 3 goes into 10 3 times with 1 left over, and I know 1/3 is just 0.3 repeating. And it was a negative fraction, so it's a negative decimal. Okay, so now I put these in order from least to greatest. This one is by far the smallest one, the coldest temperature, so we go with negative, and I use what they gave me, 10/3. The next one would be this negative 1.3, or negative 1 3/10. I only have one more negative, and that's this one right here, but remember, I don't write this. I write what they gave me, negative 2/3. And then I have 0.5 repeating, and I have 0.5. Well, if I went out to the hundredths place, this would be 0.55 with lots more fives. This would be 0.50. 0.55 is more, so I will put this one first because I'm going least to greatest, so 0 5/10. And then lastly, don't write this, write what they gave you, 5/9. Very good. Last question. The table shows the position of each runner relative to when the first place finisher crossed the finish line. So the first place finisher isn't labeled here. When they crossed, here's where their position was, this many meters back. Who finished in second place? Who finished in fifth place? Well, let's take this, let's turn them all into decimals. Now, these that are already decimals, I'll just leave, but negative 5/4 would be negative 1 1/4, which is 0.25. So there's runner B would be negative 1.25. This one's already a decimal, Negative 14/25. I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 4 and get 56/100, negative of course, which equals negative 0.56 because 56 hundredths, so that was easy. And then 13/8. So this negative 1.25, I'll write that over here on this paper. That was this runner, negative 1.25. This one is negative 0.56. And then I've got this one, which would be the same as negative 1 5/8. And so the negative 1 stays the same. Negative 1 point, and then 5/8. Well, I know 4/8 is a half, and I know 1/8 is 0.125, so I put those together and I get negative 1.625. Or you could divide it out and you'll get 0.625. But if you learn those eighths, it does make that easier. 625. Okay, who was in second place? Well, the second place person would be closest to 0, and that is, this is a negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, less than negative 1, less than. So these two are the closest. This one is by the closest. So negative 0 and 480 thousandths. They're the closest to the runner. So D. So for number 10, who finishes in second place? Runner D. And then it says who finishes in fifth place. Well, this would be second place. This would be third place. Fourth place. This is the last place, so it's between these two for fifth place. This one is closer because this would be 0.250. This is 0.264, so runner B would be in fifth place. I hope that helps. Ask questions in class tomorrow if you have any. We'll go over a lot of this in class. Have a wonderful evening.